So, welcome everyone to today's episode of Everyday Alex. Sorry, I'm 10 minutes late. My webcam decided to stop working. So, I did the only thing one can do in such a situation, and I restarted my computer and it worked. So, that's why I'm running a bit late. So, today I wanted to talk about this idea of we're at, what subtypes are affected, what our unique signature is in terms of our genetics and how our body is impacted. So you need to have the big picture pieces to help steer and navigate where it is that we're going. But we also need to have the small picture actions. You can understand the map. In fact, you can go on sort of endless inquiry and reading and exploration to sort of have the most intricate, perfect map. But if you don't take the right actions, if you don't do something with that map, then it's like knowledge is nice, but it's action that creates change. And those small picture, moment to moment details of the actions that you take become critical. And the subtlety of how we navigate those, like, for example, on a particular day, if you're on a chronic fatigue healing journey, is it a day where you need to do less? Or is it a day that your body is ready to do more? Is it a day to bounce the boundaries? Have you already bounced the boundaries too much and actually you need to go more gently? And so understanding where you are in the big picture is super important for the more fundamental decisions of what interventions you're using, what your strategy is, what your approach is. But those small picture actions, the details of what you do day to day also become critical. So to sort of navigate and hold the tension or the balance of these two pieces, the first thing is you need to have a good map. You need to be able to figure out whereabouts are you on the path that you're on. If it's a fatigue recovery journey, you need to map whereabouts you are on that path. If you're working on your relationship with yourself, if you're working on self-esteem or self-worth issues, you need to be able to name like where you are. What's the strategy? What are the things that you need to be working on? So make sure that you've got good maps. And if you feel unclear, if you feel that you're sort of drifting and you're not really sure what the next steps are, you're not really sure what needs to happen to move forwards, then rather than spending lots of effort and energy on lots of details, I would recommend taking a step back. And if you don't have a map that's working, you're reading, be it doing online courses, be it YouTube or Instagram live videos like this. But you need to find a path, a teacher, a teaching, an approach that helps you make sense of where you are. And if that map doesn't make sense, it's probably not a very good map. The map is not the territory. If you're trying to navigate from Land's End to John O'Groats, the two kind of ends of the UK. The whole point is the map. I guess I'm thinking sort of pre-Google Maps here, but the old-fashioned sort of maps that we used to open out needs to sort of fold down and fit in a pocket, or at least fit in a rucksack. So there is endless abbreviation and assumption and kind of lost detail and nuance. Like an entire beautiful forest is just like a little blob of green on the map. But the overall picture helps you navigate. It helps you steer the steps you need to be going and how you need to be progressing and moving forwards. So you need to have the map. And if the map doesn't make sense, the map's too complicated, or the map perhaps isn't going to work. So take the time to figure out, get the big picture map that's going to help you and going to support you. The next thing you need to do is you need to follow that through with action. And you need to make sure you don't end up in an analysis paralysis where you have so much information, so many ideas, so many questions, so much sort of complexity of what you think you should or shouldn't be doing at any point. You need to then break that map down, to chunk it down into the specific steps and details. It's Sort of the question is, how do you eat an elephant? Not that I'm condoning the eating of elephants, but if you were to eat an elephant, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. You need to break it down. It's the same thing. Some of you know, I'm working on a book at the moment, and actually the last couple of days working on it. One of the things when you work on a book is if you start working on a whole book, you go into overwhelm. You need to pick a chapter and then pick a section of that chapter. But again, it's a great example of you need to hold the big picture. You need to understand how that fits and relates to the overall big picture. And what you need to be able to do is to get right into the specific detail of that word, of that sentence, of that paragraph, and how that all fits together. When it comes to choosing the map, when it comes to getting that sort of big picture strategy and direction, one of the things that where we have a particular perspective, we see things a certain way. And then what we do is we collect evidence that supports that perspective, and we ignore the evidence that contradicts that perspective. This is why you can have two people in a political debate, and they will keep presenting each other with the reasons why the other person's perspective is flawed or wrong, and each will likely come away more convinced of their original perspective. And that's happening because they're just looking for the arguments, reinforcing their perspective on a healing journey, be it a healing journey from chronic illness, be it a healing journey from psycho-emotional kind of wounds or hurt or whatever. What we can tend to do is hold a certain perspective. And then we look for the evidence that reinforces and supports the perspective we're holding. The problem is that when we do this, our map doesn't get challenged. We tend to just find more evidence and more reasons for the original map that we had. What we want to be doing is constantly challenging that map. We want to be looking for the evidence that contradicts it. We want to be challenging our own confirmation bias. Otherwise, we just keep on reinforcing the same perspective. If the map is the right map, the map will stand up to question. The map will stand up to challenge. Now, does that mean the whole time you need to be questioning yourself? No, there's a certain point where we need to, again, go from the big picture map to the small picture action. But we need to make sure that we're able to question the assumptions that we have. And this is where practitioner input can be super important. Working with someone that's walked the path, perhaps not just themselves, but hopefully has helped many other people walk that path. They're going to have, hopefully, a depth of understanding and experience to be able to point out, sort of like when you get to that crossroad, you're going to want to go right, but make sure you go left, because if you go right, you're going to fall in the river and it gets flooded this time of year. It's like that sort of inside understanding that only comes from having walked down that path many times previously. So I'd be really curious to hear from you guys. How has using maps helped you? Like what maps, what models, be it anything from some of the approaches that I and the teams at Optimal Health Clinic have put out there, things like subtypes, stages of recovery, different systems being affected, therapeutic journey series that I've been doing in therapy with Alex Howard. There's some maps that I'm starting to bring in there, which haven't been put out so much as more of the core chronic fatigue content that we've done. So in the first sessions with Lauren, one of the maps that I'm putting out there is this idea of the idealized self, that we all have this sort of idea of who we think we need to be loved, to feel safe, to be acceptable in the world. And that's a helpful map because you can start to go, well, hang on a second. This is the ideas that I have about myself. And actually, that's potentially the cause of quite a lot of suffering, quite a lot of the difficulties being experienced. And so, yeah, I'm curious as to what maps you guys have found helpful, that have helped you navigate and steer. And I have my usual problem that the bracket holding my phone is blocking the YouTube comments. So I'm just going to move the screen down. So Karen on YouTube says, do you have any tips on how to be flexible in the moment to adjust those small actions based on the current moment. Yeah, I think part of it, Karen, is you need to have as much self-awareness as possible about what's happening, going down because the achiever pattern is getting irritated. Or is that flexibility that actually your body is asking you to rest, your body's asking you to do more. And actually what you most need to do is to listen to that. So the more awareness, and again, this all comes down to maps, but the more awareness you have of your different patterns, your different tendencies to sort of get sucked down certain paths, the more in those moments you can really be attuned to what do I really need in this moment? Like what's actually called for, not what's the kind of pattern I'd normally go down, not what's the kind of draw of the moment, but what's actually based upon as many pieces of the jigsaw, what's actually going to be the most helpful. And, you know, part of it, I think, as well, is that what happens is that each kind of decision and each moment is sort of like its own mini experiment. And to be a scientist, we have to test our hypothesis. And sometimes our hypothesis is right and we test it and it's confirmed. Other times the hypothesis is wrong and we test it and the information we get is that the hypothesis was flawed or wrong. So sometimes that kind of adjustment is based upon an experiment. And if nothing else, hopefully we learn from the feedback from the experience that we get. So yeah, anyway, I'd love to hear from anyone else of how the maps have been helpful or any questions you've got related to this. Susie says on YouTube, what if we don't know who our true selves are without illness influencing? So good question, Susie. And it's it's a question that's got quite a lot of layers to the answer. So maybe I'll just give a few thoughts. So the first thing I would say is that, yes, if you're living with a chronic illness or your life is significantly being influenced or impacted by sort of outside factors, then it can feel hard to feel alive in your true self, like to be free to do the things that you want to do, the things that you would love to do. But the core of who you are is still there. Even if it's not free to fully be lived and to do all the things that you would love to do, it's still there. And so what you might see is that there's a determined spirit that's there, like a passionate, determined part of you that can't do the things it wants to do, but the desire is there. Perhaps you'll see that there's a part of you which is compassionate and love to do is look at those underlying sort of feelings and instincts that are there, even though we can't fully act upon those. Also, we can look back to life prior to current circumstances and see how were things there. And even though we may have grown and evolved as a person, again, we get a sense of some of those underlying instincts or some of those underlying core qualities. There's a lot more on this topic, but hopefully that's some sort of helpful signposts. And Fabian on Instagram says, I find all the OHC maps useful. Keeping an open mind via meditation has helped me to explore these maps and how they map to my experience. Working the practitioner has helped me explore avenues. Yeah, I think maybe I'll say as a final point, because I've just seen the clock and I need to be out of this room before 6:30 so my wife can use it for something. That meditation is beyond the fact that meditation helps us calm and relax our system. One of the ways that I emphasize meditation in the context of the reset program is meditation helps us loosen our grip on the current maps and models we have for the world. So when we see things a certain way, we tend to get fixated. We tend to sort of cling on to things a certain way. And it becomes hard to see things with new perspectives, to see things in a different way. Meditation practice in a certain way will help us loosen those grips in a way that's very positive, because it helps us to start to see things with new clarity and to see things in new perspectives. So meditation can definitely be a real support to that. And then just Debbie on Instagram says, advice on how to rest and listen to my body. When I have 4 young children, it's virtually impossible. You know what, Debbie, I'm going to hold, maybe I'll do a Facebook Live. a YouTube live and Instagram live, exploring that theme. I think that feels bigger than I'm going to cover here, and I think I'm going to get some professional input from my wife on that topic as well. And I think I'm going to finish there. I'm going to do the same time again tomorrow. And then next week, I will. I've got some other things scheduled at the 6 o'clock slot, so I'll either do these at a different time. I might do some pre-recorded sessions, but I'll try and figure that out for tomorrow. But thank you everyone for watching and for joining me. I hope that's been helpful, and look forward to talking with you at 6 p.m. UK time tomorrow, 10 a.m. West Coast, and 1 p.m. East Coast. Bye for now.